And we are live on another super interesting episode I'm excited for on a podcast. Your host, Stephen Maxted here. And today we have a special guest, Jordan Miles, Agnetix, lighting manufacturing, Agnetix Inc. CEO here. And Jordan, thank you so much for joining myself today on the podcast. I am excited to share a little bit about even how we met. I'll try to get you, you to chat more. I could chat more about your company, I think, for the whole hour here because it's
Sure.
really cool. But pass it over to you and introduce yourself to the listener here, a little bit more about you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me, Steve, and for hosting the podcast. It's exciting times, growing things indoors to feed and comfort the world has one of the highest growth rates on Earth in any industry. I think that the idea of climate change, the idea of a pandemic society disrupting our supply chain, highlighting national security, concerns to feed our populations with more hyper local solutions. It's an exciting time to be in this industry. And, just as a quick introduction, my background, I've been in supply chain, industrial automation for the better part of 30 years now. And really what that means is looking at these workflows from raw materials across the manufacturing process into logistics out to the consumers, people, goods, and assets in motion, wrapping technology and information to make decisions, to be more efficient, to be more competitive, to be more predictable and productive. It's exactly what we're doing here at Agnetix, and I'm excited to be here to talk about it today.
That is awesome. I think that there, right there alone is a lot to unbundle, as we'll call it. But I know for me here, I know lots about the light, so I'm going to try to kind of go back in and be micro on it. But what kind of separates your the product here? Let's dive into that for a minute, and then maybe we'll come back into where you guys have been and where you're going. But what makes the lighting so special for the listener here?
Yeah, so I think where we immediately stand aside is that it's easy to, on the surface, categorize Agnetix as a lighting company. We have a light, like other companies have a light. It's a digital light, but where we stand aside are specifically in that we have a water-cooled light. A light that operates at room temperature. It gets brighter but never hotter, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this. Energy is the linchpin in everything to do with this cultivation process. I mean, we're reproducing or trying to reproduce the power of the sun indoors. And so energy is really the linchpin, and those that have the ability to kind of get a hold of it and optimize it and be efficient with how they deploy that kind of technology in these industrial workflows. That's the secret to standing aside on the competitive landscape. But from a macro perspective, it's important to think about Agnetix more as a platform. We have more than just a light. The light is part of a platform that combines the most efficient energy of anyone in this category with information in real time. What's happened, what's happening right now, and the promise of some of the machine vision technology that we're working on, from data acquisition through environmental sensors and other machine vision technologies to the promise of imaging and even multispectral imaging to see things that the human eye can't see, to make predictions about what's going to happen if you don't act now, to potentially reduce risk to the crop while you can still impact the outcome. This is immediately where we stand aside, is that we make the only truly smart lights in horticulture that combines energy, precision energy control, and information to make decisions in real time that can still impact the outcome.
Love that. I'm going to break that down a little bit more on my end too. Sure. When I'm looking at both the online and what I've seen in person, but then knowing a little bit more, I'll never forget the first time I heard about the company. It was in a coffee shop with a mutual connection there. But the way it was described to me was basically a lighting system with very high-end cameras within there and sensors, and as you mentioned, the water cooling system that's in there. And for someone who's maybe not used to many of the lighting systems out there, but basic, and if I'm going to try to break this down, and I want you to hop in after and critique this description here, but basically the indoor grow, like closed system, there is also a computer outside that is running and monitoring the entire grow, and you have the ability to look. Because I've seen a grower, one of your growers, Luke, I think, showed me on his phone. He was able to monitor everything on his system right from a trade show that we met at. And what was really interesting to me was when your camera is monitoring the plant growth underneath, it's doing many things in, we'll call it harmony, as the sensor is named, with sensing different things such as humidity, temperature. Your lighting is smart enough to detect different things within growth. And as you do more, and as you have done a lot of research with many of the PhD folks on the team there, were to make improvements along that way, which is only going to help many other grows that you guys are involved with. And what else? I don't know if I missed anything else, but just from, I was thinking dialing in a little bit more basic to the actual system itself there.
So that's a good description. I think that the idea of monitoring what's happening and having the ability within our platform to set thresholds. So we're monitoring, just to give you an example, we're monitoring the environment. We're monitoring the plant leaf temperature in infrared at all times. We're monitoring and logging what's happening with our environmental sensors, temperature, humidity, CO2 parts per million. And then we're working in concert with the sensors that are built into our light. Having a light that, if you can imagine how these industrial processes work, growing things indoors requires, we typically see multiple systems, and usually these are one-trick pony systems. So if we focus on just following the energy, right? You need energy for plants, and you need energy for ancillary mechanical systems to maintain stability in the environment, equilibrium in the environment, in order to have precision control over your grow. Energy is often the number one or number two line item on your OPEX. So it's the very first place that we're going to look at to realize levels of efficiency and optimization that will ultimately lead to a competitive advantage. Where we again bifurcate from pretty much every other company that has a light out there is that this idea of a platform approach, we're often able to consolidate and or retire multiple one-trick pony systems that we see in these grows. So following the energy, I'll just pick on high pressure sodium lamps, which is still kind of the stalwart lighting system that is irradiating anything from microgreens to cannabis at the other end, supplemental light in a greenhouse, or dedicated sole source artificial light in controlled environment agriculture. There's still literally hundreds of thousands of these lights deployed across the world. They do a reasonably good job of growing things indoors, but they're horrifically inefficient. They were actually developed for parking lots in the 1950s. Right. And fully 62% of the energy that flows into these old high pressure sodium lamps goes out the window. That's why, I often make the analogy that you could pull into an industrial park. There might be 100 buildings, and you could pick out the one that's growing something indoors, because it's invariably going to be surrounded by this mechanical equipment, cooling and dehumidification systems to maintain stability in the environment. What's not well known or not well understood is that for the most part, that equipment isn't there for the plants. It's there to offset the invisible fixture waste heat from inefficient artificial lighting. And if you continue that energy walk and then look at a modern digital light for horticulture, and this formula applies at any light level, whether it's low light for leafy greens, microgreens, or berries, and at the other end, a high light intensity, high energy density plant like cannabis, you just moving to a modern digital light. By the time you kind of package these LED diodes into a broad spectrum, a catch-all light, very good for growing anything, similar spectrum to the sun. At best, they're 50% efficient. Even our light, before we apply water cooling, it's only 50% efficient. So you get a little bit better efficiency out of it. You might reduce your HVAC load and the equipment that you need to maintain the environment, but still predominantly half the energy is going out the window. With our light, we have a few technologies, and just as a sidebar, I think we've reached 24 patent grants just in the United States alone. We have a number of European patents and Korea, China. We're doing a very good job to establish that the things that we're doing are really forward first innovations with this platform level approach. But one of the technologies we have, and makes us kind of unique, is the world's most efficient power supply. We make it ourselves. Our co-founder, CTO, Dr. Ihor List, is a PhD electrical engineer. He's generally credited with having invented intelligent digital lighting. So think like RGB color shifting LEDs that we see in use all over the world. In fact, his original invention for intelligent digital lighting prototype is in the Smithsonian Museum of American History. And I think at last count, he's authored over 200 patents related to intelligent digital lighting. With Agnetix, this idea of a light that runs at room temperature, as you can imagine, having these light arrays that are always going to be above the plants, always going to have electricity running to them. That then makes it a really great place to put cameras and sensors and other technologies as an eye in the sky to take the guesswork out of what's happening. We go into a lot of these grows, there's a lot of anecdotal information of here's what's happening, but that's not really what's happening. It's a lot of guesswork because for the most part, growing things indoors has been a very analog process. It's very plant focused, whereas the company like Agnetix, we like to think of ourselves as an industrial automation company. We're focused on the plant that's making the plant. The whole facility is where we focus on process and really unlocking the performance of the building and not of the plant itself. If you get everything right on the process side, the plant, which is a biological machine, will perform as well as it could possibly perform because all things considered equal, it's getting everything it needs. And good feed, good genetics, skills, and a well-developed SOP, precision control of the environment, and good energy, you're going to have a great outcome.
That definitely relates back to, I'll call it like my more, I think it's called like traditional or industrial ag experience being in fields. And we'll call it almost like a prior life in some ways, not that long ago, but you look at that and there's so many variables on the farm. And even back then I had the thought, getting excited to meet you for the first time and continue conversation on the podcast here around your product. I really was genuinely excited about it because you're offering full control on that. There's so many variables on the farm. Things can, for certain crops, I don't know if we ever will move in. Maybe we will. Maybe there's more insight that you would have on some bigger, crops in terms of like, corn, soybean, wheat. Some of those other things are probably still going to stay outdoors. But in terms of a lot of the other stuff that's ground level in different, more southern, I'll call it like states in different parts of the world, hotter to grow, things I could see a huge benefit, and even being able to grow them more locally, like in northern places, even based out of Winnipeg here comes to mind right away. This is back to home base for you for Origin. And, it's so cold here in the winter. What's the expectation of getting really fresh produce? I think we've set a standard to have it available, but, is that realistic?
I'll think of it this way. The idea of these, the impact of these extreme climate events, climate change, extreme weather makes for unpredictable circumstances in trying to, continue with traditional agriculture outdoors, even in a greenhouse environment. And again, I'm really this general statement around growing anything. These greenhouses, look, it's really great. The sun is free, but you can't control it. And in certain instances, the idea of controlled environment, agriculture, controlled environment, horticulture, is just that. It's about the ability to control all of the inputs to be more predictable, more precise, more efficient, and therefore, I think, more competitive overall in a for-profit business. And, we see and have seen a lot of really passionate cultivators that have a lot of romance for, and in particular, we see this in cannabis all day long, a lot of romance for the plant. And sometimes I think there's some level of optimism and forgetfulness that 100% of the consumers that are buying this product never get to see the facility it came out of, never get to see the pretty plants that these growers have grown. And what's kind of refreshing now, we're 5+ years of launch to market. I think at last check, we have approaching 14,000 of our high-powered lights in 5 countries. And, when we first got started and cut our teeth in cannabis because, we're doing 50 things in the world that no one's ever done before, we had a lot of headway against both digital lighting because, early LEDs sucked because they sucked. And they weren't really viewed as a realistic replacement for these old burning hot, high-pressure sodium lamps. But now as time has passed, even the air-cooled LEDs have gotten better. But what we're now encountering are a lot more business acumen, process-oriented, engineering-minded, math and science decision-making stakeholders from the plant-touching cultivation team all the way to the executive suite, understanding the energy quotient. At the end of the day, the laws of physics are in our corner. And I'll explain just a little bit what that means. If you imagine that even the most modern digital light is only 50% efficient, the other energy that goes into these grows with an air-cooled light, which, by the way, if we're just thinking as lay people, like air-cooled industrial technology, like that's Volkswagen Beetle era thinking. You've got a device trying to reproduce the power of the sun, and I'm going to do it with like an air-cooled fixture that's like a Volkswagen Beetle up in the ceiling. I've got a fan on it, and I'm going to take all that invisible infrared heat, and I'm going to move it over there in the same box. And like the second law of thermodynamics is like that energy that you can't see is still there. And when we go into these grows, what we see a lot of is the operations team really struggling with this dance of trying to identify and eradicate microclimates and airflow so that you don't end up with pathogens or other issues, defects in what you're growing, because there's a lot of energy going on. With water cooling, the laws of physics are in our corner. Water is literally thousands of times more efficient at moving that useless to the plant's fixture waste heat out of the facility than vacuuming it out of the air. And so the journey with Agnetix typically starts and ends with, let's just show you exactly what's happening in your environment at your cost of energy. This is the physics. There's no guessing. There's no sales spin. So picking again on high pressure sodium lamps, if all we wanted to do was go in and retrofit a facility that's running these old lights at equal energy density, we're going to need 40% fewer fixtures and 50 to 70% less cooling and dehumidification to equal the energy that you might be growing at with high pressure sodium lamps. With a digital air-cooled light, we might be 30% less equipment. And again, that equipment can sometimes take as much or more energy than the lights themselves. But the other exciting part is that when you take away the fixture waste heat, whether it's comparing us to high pressure sodium or a digital light, not only does half the equipment go away that you don't have to buy and energize and service, but the set points for the equipment that's left move way up because you're not cooking the plants with invisible infrared. 100% of every grow we go to, whether it's leafy greens or cannabis at the other end, the limit on how much you can turn the wick up to grow, which means how fast, because turning energy up, things happen faster and healthier. The limit is only the plant's ability to absorb this and process and sweat out this invisible fixture waste heat. So that the way that our platform works is we're able to send only usable energy to the plants. We are capturing 100% of the fixture waste heat that is normally going out the window, and you get all that energy that you paid for back. So we can make some really big statements that no one else in the entire industry can make. We make the only horticulture lighting in the world that can make use of 100% of the energy powering the platform. Plants get all photosynthetically active radiation. You get all of that fixture waste heat back. Reuse it when it's cold, reject it outside the facility when it's hot. Half your HVAC goes away. The HVAC that's left, we now move up into, like, we're growing at 85F and 70% humidity. Imagine as a consumer, Steve, that it's summer now, it's 100 degrees F outside or 30 degrees C. And what's the impact to your pocketbook in one household if you move your thermometer, air conditioning, from the mid 70s to 85F? Imagine at 100,000 square feet, the impact of being able to move all of those set points up and ditch a lot of that equipment. That's going to be the secret in the future, is full energy optimization. And the last big statement that we can make is that any grower of any size in any category, growing anything using Agnetix, can make the statement that they're doing so at the lowest carbon footprint of any grower in the same class anywhere in the world. That's a really big deal, because we see these commercial growers moving in, taking as much energy as a small town. Often there's no more energy available. It's such a strain on the electrical infrastructure that Agnetix has worked very closely with utilities all over the country. And just about a month ago, we had the largest pre-approval incentive rebate in the history of the state of Maine in any industry. Fully, the state is prepared to pay 46% of the $1.5 million upgrade cost for a vertically integrated cannabis company to ditch their high-pressure sodium lamps and roll out the world's most efficient lighting. It's so important to the utilities, they're willing to write a check for almost $700,000 to our customer to lower the barrier of entry to the most efficient technology. That's really exciting trending, because it shows that, again, even the utilities recognize that limiting the draw and the stress on our finite infrastructure, as it's a hotter world out there now, is they're willing to pay for that, and it's a big benefit to lower the barrier of entry to access our technology.
That is awesome to hear. And I was thinking, as you were chatting, I was just reviewing before our call today, and probably about a week ago as well, the price of electricity in the States relative to that. And I'm excited that you mentioned that and went down that path there, because upper, I'll call it like east, and you might comment more specifically, I don't have them right in front of me, because you might know this top of mind, but there's some really big pockets in the States where there is a big gap in price of energy. And I wrote this down here. I'm always taking notes on stuff, but I heard you say they're improving basically like time and energy, both from like the grower side of things, and then obviously the energy use. And so bottom line in those businesses is being improved upon.
Let me quantify that for you a little bit.
Sure.
You're right. And there's a massive variance on energy rates and how competitive you're ultimately going to be. If you, again, remember, energy is number 1 or 2 next to labor on your monthly OPEX. Your cost of power, and that's why we saw initially when Canada came online for legalizing cannabis, you had all these big, huge enterprise scale cannabis companies relocating next to a dam or an old mine, basically where there's free power. We have a site here in San Diego that's just down the street from our lab that's paying 33 cents a kilowatt hour for commercial cannabis production. It is the highest we've seen. We've got sites as low as 6 cents. So imagine you've got a guy competing in another state for cannabis, and they're knocking out cannabis at 6 cents a kilowatt hour versus 33. You know for sure that the guy that's paying 5 times plus for the cost of energy, that operator, those stakeholders are going to be thinking about energy efficiency as the number one thing all day, all night, every single day. And to your other comment about, what is then what's some of the other, what impact that across that cycle, this is speaking now to this effect that water cooling has. If you imagine then that the plant is a biological machine, it's governed by the laws of physics, the rest of us on this planet and in this universe. If you never irradiate that plant with a whole bunch of invisible fixture waste heat that it can't see, right? Because our lights send only usable energy to the plants. The plants that we grow, whether it's leafy greens, berries, or cannabis, they're metabolizing faster, healthier, than under other lighting conditions. So, for example, we upgraded a cannabis facility a while back from high pressure sodium lamps. And one of the things that we do very well, if you then understand that putting in our lighting, and what if you already had all this HVAC that was inefficiently combined with this high pressure sodium lamps? If all you did was upgrade to our lighting, like a 1-for-1 fixture, we would double the usable light to the plants and take more efficient advantage of the infrastructure that you already have. And so what we did there in this cannabis facility, the potency of the plants for THC went up double digits. So yield went up like almost 60%. They got a whole nother cycle in annually because they grew a week faster with more light. There's no secret. Turn the wick up, more equals more. So this one facility had double-digit increase in yield, double-digit increase in potency, and a whole nother cultivation cycle a year. Our lights, on average, have an ROI period of 1 to 2 cycles before the platform is paid for itself. That's how efficient it is. The other thing that's happened is in the last 3 years, it's been validated by, independently, our farms have won pretty much the big competitions that matter. And again, in cannabis, in 2022, our farm Woodwide Craft Cannabis out of Mendocino or Fort Bragg, California, 400 blind flower entries on COA Labs results alone. Our farm won the Emerald Cup for terpenes, which is flavor, taste, and scent. They've won 2 of 3 years the California Grow Off, the same farm. We had a farm take first place in 2 flower categories in the Oklahoma Cannabis Cup. And just 2 days ago in Michigan, one of our farms won the High Times Cannabis Cup. Second year in a row, one of our farms has won. Michigan High Times Cannabis Cup, first place for hybrid flower. Really proud to call out Luke Whitney and his team from New Life, Michigan. That's a really, really big validation for us that multiple farms in multiple states and multiple competitions are standing above with this technology. It's an exciting time for Agnetix and our partners.
Absolutely. No, even when you said right there amongst the awards, which is awesome, and congrats to those growers and yourself for, the showcase that in terms of your performance and truly validating at the end of the day, right? When someone else can start to tell your story, because I'm sure that it is in very high regards on their end and running their business. They see those.
Well, cannabis growers, they have a lot of bravado. They're very proud of what they're doing, and we support the grower community. We support all of these passionate cultivators that have given their life to this thing that we're in. And, as much as we want to really open their minds to now what's possible with technology, modern innovative technology and information to take the guesswork out, and it's really refreshing now to see this. We have so much traction and a lot of good outcomes over the last few years that the growers now, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt of what is this water cooling and high-powered lighting and the sensors and cameras. We've got so much traction out there now. The fear, uncertainty, and doubt is less of a concern. And more importantly, growers that had honed their skills and SOPs under these other conditions, they're more willing to step outside their comfort zone, to be more innovative, to be more efficient, to be more sensitive to the carbon density of what they're doing, growing things indoors. And part of give you a peek at what's coming down the pike for Agnetix. We've done very well, I think, to be quite established in cannabis. We've won all these competitions. The majority of our focus has been in cannabis, but what's little known about what Agnetix is doing, and we really thought about this when we launched to market at the beginning of 2018, after a few years in development. By the way, we got started on this almost 10 years ago, developing the platform, but we immediately here in San Diego have built the 2 highest light intensity, most instrumented horticulture research chambers in the world are right here in our lab in San Diego, both a sea of green with our flagship light and our new 8-foot vertical farming solution. imagine in vertical farms, energy density and the chimney effect of heat rising with artificial light and microclimates. We have an 8-foot long vertical farming light that runs at room temperature. So right away, the chimney effect and the idea of these microclimates and all of our technology to maintain equilibrium, it's very exciting. So we now have our innovation center here in San Diego. Our cannabis experiments are pretty well done at this point. We have a huge facility just half a mile down the road from us that's tourable with glass walls. They can really see Agnetix technology at scale. We're just about to start our leafy greens and berry trials with some really strong collaborators. American Hydroponics, AM Hydro, is going to be in the San Diego lab at the end of July. These are some of the most well-known enterprise-scale leafy greens growers in the country. And they're going to be collaborating with Agnetix on leafy greens experiments to, again, raise the bar as we've done in cannabis, grow more, faster, healthier, for less energy and guesswork than anyone in the world. And aligning with these experts, and we're doing a similar track where a well-known craft strawberry consultant is going to be here from the Netherlands, shaping Agnetix strawberry trials. And we love to share what we're doing. We love to share the data. There's no guessing in any of it, no sales spin. And, we have a lot of followers on social media. We're really going to be excited to turn heads and give people an idea of what's possible with this exciting technology in a non-production environment. So a lot of what we're doing is not just turning the light level up, but we actually use these chambers to create the very attributes, defects, anomalies, and pathogens that our machine vision technology is then using to be able to detect and make that information available to the cultivation team. Again, takes the guesswork out of it, reduce risk to the crop while you can still impact the outcome. It's exciting.
It's very exciting. One of the bigger things I wrote down there, amongst a couple of other things, Jordan, is just around doubling yield. When I think back to, and I'm going to reference it again as like traditional, like that's just the best way I know to do this, like field scale items between weather events, whether that be hail, pests, other stuff that can affect the crop and then ultimately affect the production of that cycle. I'm thinking of things like canola and soybeans and even cereals to that degree. When you go back to berries, one of the first jobs I had was actually on a strawberry farm. And I look back, some years ended up being a write-off because of too much moisture sitting on the soil with the plant. And maybe to just learn a little bit about this in a way here, about what kind of facilities the lights are used in when we're talking about this. I know you just mentioned kind of like vertical walls and indoor grows, maybe describing to the listener like what those look like. And for businesses who are already in that space, it's going to relate easily to them. But I think of, farming and indoor farming in a few different ways now. But what kind of facilities would the lights be used in?
So here's what we now know for sure, that the idea of this the new sort of climate that we live in, it's hotter, it's drier, less predictable, extreme weather events. What was then further highlighted by the pandemic on a global basis was the disruptive effect that these events can have on the food supply chain. And then you start to think about just the absurdity in modern times of growing lettuce in California and putting it on a train and sending that head of lettuce to New York. Like by the time it gets there, you've got a couple days to consume it. Putting strawberries and lettuce on a plane and flying it to the Middle East, like just the supply chain, the carbon density, the human labor, the cost and expense and complexity of moving food around the world to feed an increasingly growing global population. We're now talking to Singapore and Southeast Asia that imports 80% of their food. I mean, this is an issue of national security. And so what we're already seeing, and there's a lot of buzz out there, hyper-local, urban, vertical farms that are designed to reduce all of that waste and lost time and expense that's wrapped around that. And I think that the pivot to directly answer your question, Steve, is that these facilities now are deploying more and more a footprint in infrastructure that looks like a modern industrial facility, like you would see with robotics and
Right.
machine vision and precision control over the energy and for growing in the environment. I think the staple kind of viewpoint of horticulture and this analog process where very pretty plants in a greenhouse waiting for the sun. Sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. It might be this cycle of this many days or that many days. And you have people standing around with clipboards all fawning over a plant. Those days are numbered. And what we're now starting to see are modern, high automated, high levels of automation and technology, industrial process workflow technology, and organizations that are really understanding that this is not different than any other supply chain that's out there. And I hate to use this analogy, but I have before, because nobody wants to hear that their baby is ugly. But sometimes, at the beginning, you walk into these cannabis facilities,
Very
and
true.
what I'm seeing, and it's painful in some cases, where I've walked in and I've been in like 1,000 of these facilities all over the world, and it's grandma's garage grow at 100,000 square feet. I've got parking lot lights and a bunch of equipment and no idea what's going on in the environment. Microclimates, it's humid and raining over there, and these guys are really struggling and to have it all dialed in. Early on in cannabis, when first launched to kind of this market, and it's been accelerated by what's happening in California and other states at the state level, and the momentum we have out of Canada. When cannabis is $4,000 a pound for dried flower, nobody cares about efficiency, because you can grow with all this crap and you're still going to make money. And then there's a lot of resistance to change, right? I might be the grower. I know how to do this one thing under these circumstances. I don't want to be the guy, the girl that cooks the crop, because I'm investigating some new technology. What's the compelling event to make me believe that efficiency is the key now to success? If we watch the trending, there are places in the country now where they started at 4,000 a pound, and now it's 600 or 800 a pound. And I then liken it to, that's really great what you guys are doing here, but I want you to imagine that you're making tennis rackets. And if you're not able to make tennis rackets for the less than the guy across the street who's also making tennis rackets, and soon the street is going to have 10 guys making tennis rackets. And if the guy making tennis rackets has Agnetix and you have high pressure sodium lamps as your technology, you're dead. Because as romantic as it might be about what you're doing with the plant, if you can't knock it out for as much OPEX or less than the guy across the street, and as more business acumen oriented operators get in with less romance to the plant, there's so much high quality product available. If you're not competitive, you're dead. And we're now seeing this horror show of attrition, because these myopic viewpoints of these operators are like, I can throw up the $200 lights and grow cannabis, as an example. Well, that's really great. There's a reason those lights are $200, and in fact, in some cases, they're free because nobody wants them. If you're caught out where your cost of production is twice as much as the guy across the street growing the same flower you see in the store, not in the factory, you can pretty much follow where the industry is going. Absolutely. For Agnetix, what makes that exciting is that, again, there's no sales spin. We spend the vast majority of our engagement in the journey with Agnetix is simply walking the physics of energy and what's happening in your environment, every environment. It's not unique to Agnetix. This is thermodynamics, and there's no mystery. It's no guesswork.
Oh, I love that. And the first thing that popped in my head, though, that we'll call it, and kind of the name of this show, anyways, with A and it being Canadian, I started thinking back to when I always did really like the feel of the wooden hockey sticks when I was playing hockey, and it was semi-competitive. But you look at like the trend of those, even, and it was very evident, within that technology, you go to like a 2-piece, then all of a sudden it's a 1-piece, and then no one's using wood anymore. And I don't even know if it's like a thing.
Technology moves forward, and
Yeah.
here we are again, like we're technologists, we're engineering driven in everything we do. There's everything is from a no guessing math, science, technology, perspective. And what we're now really excited about is that even the low margin, like lettuce is still lettuce, no matter what technology you've used. It's not selling for $4,000 a pound. And so, the compelling event and making the return on investment math work for the much thinner margin fruits and leafy greens community with this very innovative technology, it's a harder sell. But as you now know, Steve, you mentioned Winnipeg. We have the University of Manitoba installing Agnetix to begin leafy greens trials with water cooled lighting from Agnetix, and we're even going to feature one of our flagship lights in a fall semester class on technology driven controlled environment agriculture. We're about to start strawberries and leafy greens here.
So cool.
This is the most exciting time, I think, to be in the space of CEA anything, and the idea of the most innovative technology at the forefront of it that also reduces the stress to the planet. I think we're in a very good place to raise the bar, set the bar for those that are to follow.
I could not agree more, and that is very exciting. I have stopped by to check out that facility when you guys were first installing it out of general interest. It was very cool, and I mean, what I'm hearing there is like you're already in many grows, both in many different categories around the world, and then now you're kind of we'll call it, I don't know, doubling down, tripling down, going into different areas of grow. Different people are now going to kind of come back, I think, and discover the exact same thing that you guys already know and your grows already see in terms of their performance, and it's really elevating their grow game and
it's true
their
and
business.
It's true, and I think we've now, I'm proud to say that our young company at the pointy end of innovation has arrived at the top of the heap. We're taking a bite out of the apple of companies that are 100 times our size, and we're not talking about 30 or 50 light grows. We just upgraded a facility in Florida. It's 100,000 square feet. We have 1,500 of our 1,200 watt water cooled lights. Like, the technology is real, it's proven. But now it's proven at enterprise scale, and we have probably a massive pipeline of really exciting projects. And so, I would say to your audience, keep watching. We're going to continue to raise the bar and do things that no one in the world has done before, and I think that to the benefit of humanity, if you will.
That is awesome. That is a great comment too. I think it truly is, Jordan, what you guys are doing here and what we've learned throughout the last couple of years about local production. I think that side of agriculture and even what we see today is going to change a lot, and it's going to look a lot more of what you've kind of illustrated here and around it, how it can be done and how it will be done. I think will be the case as we see this industry grow, no pun intended.
Well, I agree, Stephen. So here's the call to action and an opportunity for your listeners. I mentioned that we have this sandbox that we like to call it, this non-production sandbox. We really have everything soup to nuts, including a precision microdosing system here. In addition to all of our experiments and our ability to tour people through without disrupting the plants, a modern state-of-the-art cannabis facility just down the road from our lab. It's an open invitation. We love to host here in San Diego. We'd love to invite collaborators to help with doing some exciting experiments that no one else in the world can do. But the other thing that we offer now is any commercial grower that wants to give us a floor plan, tell us how much you're paying for power, what are you doing today, where would you like to go? We'll do designs for free so that we can model up, here's what an Agnetix retrofit or a new build might look like at your cost of energy. What does it cost to buy, own, and operate all of the equipment that you need to run the facility? Not just lighting, but lighting, HVAC, how much energy you need for both, how much cooling and dehu you need mechanically to maintain the environment. And then what does it cost to buy, own, and operate all that equipment over a 5-year period versus any other light source? We'll do all of that for you guys, for your listeners, for nothing. And then we even invite, and have done it many times in the past, is to say, you can give us your genetics, whether it's berries, lettuce, or cannabis. We'll put it in our chamber and we'll show you
See
what we
how
can do in our lab to take the guesswork out of it. And
that's very cool.
what's really been almost funny, Steve, is that from 2018 to now, initially there was the bravado I mentioned in cannabis, where I'm going to take my, I know what to do with these old lights, this high pressure sodium lights. I'm going to challenge Agnetix to a grow off. And no amount of me saying, is it your belief that the plant can tell which type of light delivered the photon it might use for photosynthesis? Like, it's really great that you're passionate about what you're doing, but again,
Right.
there's no sales spin here. If we put our
It's
stuff
just
in, we turn the light up, we're not cooking the plant. Like, we've won every grow off that anyone's ever challenged us to within half the time. We've already won. Visibly, you can see it. And always my comment is, like I tried to tell you guys at the beginning, the laws of physics are in our corner. Like, there's no mystery here. We're going to win every time because of the thermodynamics that's happening. That's exciting, but we have these chambers here to really show people beyond any shadow of a doubt. Energy is the key. Get it all dialed in, and the magic happens.
I love to hear that, and this would be a great thing to share absolutely with the listener. And as far as we can pass along that message, I think that's a great proof of statement of someone out there that is taking the kind of a dangerous word in many industries is the pride behind things. Because you can be very proud of things, but you have to back it with analytics and facts to bring it to fruition. Because numbers don't lie.
That's right. At the end of the day, the math is the math, and building on good outcomes. The idea of this combining, so coming full circle. The takeaway is Agnetix is way more than a lighting company. It's a platform, energy, the most important input, and information to make decisions in real time, build on good outcomes with no guessing, learn from less than expected results, and the promise of what might happen with this machine vision if you don't act now to take risk out of the crop is the most exciting piece, because at the end of the day, you're only going to get better because of that foundation.
That is fantastic. Jordan, what we look ahead on the calendar here. I know that just from following the journey online here, that you guys were just in New York for an Ag Tech conference out there. And what else do you have on the calendar if a listener or someone else out there wants to bump into you or happens to be at something? Anything on the calendar as we're looking ahead here that you can comment on today?
Yeah, so that's interesting, Steve. I think we're at a bit of a crossroads, if you will, for these flyaway trade shows where you've got to set up a booth. And, we had a lot of disruption to that traditional, everybody fly in, get a hotel. Sometimes, in particular in cannabis, mostly it's a boondoggle. We have spent a lot of money doing those events over time. And I think the future for us is going to be that we might even be willing to credit back the cost of travel for qualified commercial, enterprise level prospective Agnetix customers to fly to our lab and spend a couple of days here in a more intimate, collaborative environment than to spend 10 times that amount of money to go to one of these trade shows.
100%.
So I predict that we're going to be doing less of those. We might do a couple of international shows as we spread our wings now outside of North America. I mean, we're already in 5 countries, but historically, Agnetix has spent very little money on sales and marketing. In fact, just as a quantifier, typically companies like ours would spend 6 to 8% of top line revenue on sales and marketing initiatives. Mm-hmm. We've spent less than 2% since we launched to market. Agnetix has been mostly a research and development and intellectual property organization. We've developed a pretty formidable IP stack. We pay no royalties to anyone. We own 100% of our intellectual property, all the way down to every single line of code on our platform we write in-house. So our ability to not only retire these one-trick pony systems that we see in these facilities, like I think at last count, there's 5 systems we can retire for our one platform. We also have the ability to interoperate and give control to our lighting with precision to any third-party system through our software interface. So I think the trending that we're going to see from an operations perspective is much more integration and synergy of information exchange amongst systems we see at commercial scale. And from a pure marketing perspective, less trade shows and more visits to the San Diego lab. Let me check the weather. It's perfect. Not hard to lose here. I think we're getting a lot of traction. And again, it costs nothing. So for any of your listeners that might want to see 50 things in the world no one's ever done before at the pointy end of horticulture, controlled environment agriculture technology, come spend a couple of days at Agnetix lab, and we'd love to host.
Awesome. No, I think that's a great angle for you guys. And if there's things coming up, things that we'll include for listener in here anyways will be, ways to get a hold of you and the company here. I know we have Agnetix.com,
LinkedIn, social media. There's a page that will feed through to us, but at the very basic level, an email to sales@agnetix.com. Hey, I'm interested. Somebody please reach out. I would encourage you to do that. One thing that I hope we can look forward to together is, I think the impact of multimedia, by the way, pictures, quotes from key stakeholders, but these little video case studies that we're doing or have done in the past. Now that, for example, we've just again won the Michigan High Times Cup, it'd be great to get you set up with Luke Whitney, their CEO.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting some clips and sound bites from our passionate customer community. We have quite an ecosystem of cultivators and passionate stakeholders. They talk a lot to each other to compare notes and SOPs on how to really unlock the system performance of Agnetix. And, we as facilitators really take a strong proactive position to promote that. It's exciting.
That is awesome. That's all very good. And like I said, we'll include it for listener here, all this information below on our website links underneath the YouTube when it's posted, and as the posts are coming out on other socials for us. So look forward to getting this out there. And thank you again, Jordan, so much for joining us today here.
You're welcome, Steve. Have a great day, and it's good to connect.
Awesome. Thank you.